Hello and welcome to the new TMP podcast, the Meeting Point episode. My name is Adrian, and today we are delighted to have with us Tadej from APILLON. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
That's great. So if you want, you can introduce yourself and explain to us who you are and what you're working with APILLON.
Okay, so I'm Tadej. I'm the CTO of APILON. What to say about myself? I've been in crypto for quite a while, from around 2017, from mining Bitcoin to deep diving into the tech, doing a lot of development work on NFTs, frameworks, DeFi, you name it, and now finally going into fully into APILON.
That's great. So now we are going to make you like a more tricky question. It's if you can define or explain to us APILLON in just one sentence. Just in one sentence.
One sentence. Okay, so APILON is a platform that provides services, Web3 services to developers.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So now, you can explain us a little bit about APILLON, about what you're building. Not too much technical, just a little introduction.
Okay, so to broaden now this one sentence, as developers, we use a lot of tools to help us do a lot of things, and we have a lot of platforms allowing us to do those things. And as such, there's also tooling and platforms for Web3 development, but there's quite a narrow market, or it's not there yet, for more service-specific platforms and tooling. And to be more concrete, at APILLON, we deep dive into different technologies, blockchain technologies, blockchains, parachains, themselves, and create full-fledged services around them. To be very concrete, this means decentralized storage, decentralized hosting for your web page, easy NFTs, identities, etc. So things like you would, for a developer developing now in like a web world, there's like a very common thing. I need storage. I go to AWS, I create a bucket, drag and drop a file, and that's it. That file is stored. We're recreating that experience, but the end result is decentralized, distributed, so that we can provide a full Web3 service.
That's perfect. And now you mentioned to us like several times the Web3 word. Can you explain to our listeners who don't maybe understand what is the Web3, what really means the Web3?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I would say there's a few versions of how people talk about it. I would say that the first one would be to understand really what was, Web 1. So in Web 1, you would have pages where you more or less consumed the data. So you had a news web page, you would read it, and that's basically all you could do. Now in more Web 2, now the users also co-created the content. So they were able to also write, share their own thoughts, images, so like Facebook, blogs, etc. So users were able to write and read. And of course, now this is like the conceptual. There's a lot of technologies that come with that as well. Now, the Web3 movement adds the third part of that is ownership. So that you, as a creator, as the one that's creating content, you're also the owner of that content and have control over that content. So what's going on, you have privacy with that. And that is quite a big, mystery and quite a big part of this. And Additionally, I like to say that one of the things you want from a Web3 application is for it to be unstoppable. That's when you say it like that, it becomes a much more clearer mission of what you want application to be. And an unstoppable application also means that there's no central part that can control or break down, preventing the application to be useful. So to be more concrete, if you host your page on a centralized server, if that server goes down, or if the government comes to the server provider and says, look, you need to shut this page down, they can do that. And the page will not be online, it will not exist anymore, meaning it's not unstoppable. But in the case you have a distributed protocols like IPFS, where the page itself is located on multiple machines, where it can be accessed. There's no one point a government can come and say shut this down. They would need to find each and every of that individuals, delete those files, which it makes it quite a bit more unstoppable.
Yeah.
So I would say that's another aspect of what I would encompass into the word Web3.
That's great. So can you give us an example of, for example, a Web 2.0 application or Web 2 application?
Facebook.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And now let's talk about our data. We know that in Facebook there are like a really big servers in California. What is the difference these servers with the APILLON proposal of the data and sharing?
So they're the ones that have all the data on their servers. So if they want to shut down, all that data is lost. Plus, all that data is in their control, so they can, do data mining, etc., on it without any consent, or at least not, of the users. While if you have a distributed file system, those files are on multiple computers. And anyone can access them, so there's no way to actually stop it. So there's no one controlling party, and you can do additional thing to also add ownership on top of it. So you can be owner of the data. One of the interesting projects that's working on that is to have tracking is Wunderbar. This is I believe a future parachain on Polkadot, and also one of the projects that we're looking and researching for a new integration. And like Google provides tracking of user data and stores them and sells that data. And Wunderbar is trying to prevent that and give ownership of that data back to the actual user, so they can revoke access to their files. And those files are also stored on a distributed ledger. Oh, no, not ledger, but in a distributed way.
Yeah, talking about the companies, maybe what will be the use of the Web3 offers the users in the big companies, in the near future?
In near future, so it really kind of depends of how you look at it. Big companies are not really the ones that have interest to change that much, because that's their bread and butter. That's how they abuse the data. I believe the change will have to come from the users. So the users have to be the ones that want to have their data in their control. They need to know what's going on. Fortunately, there's laws that are coming in that, like GDPR, that are more data conscious. But I believe users will be the ones that will need to demand, like, I don't want to use this service because I want to be in control of my data. And that will either force the big companies to change, to adapt to that, or new companies to arise and take over.
Yeah. So now today I want to ask you about what's the role of Apillons? That is the role that Apillon is playing in the Web3 world, exactly for the developers and yeah, for the user.
Yeah, so at APILLON, our mission is to empower developers. That's our core belief. So if we want to have a real move from Web 2 to Web 3, we need to make things simpler. So, blockchains and a lot of protocols in that really tackle these problems are, like the name itself, protocols. That means they're low level, and they need more easy access to, let's say, more normal developers or developers that want to focus on end applications. And it's our job to make that simple, to create services so that developers, instead of working with protocols, they work with an actual service, something that is easy to use, and we take care of that complexity. Like even if you do visit a web page, there's tons of protocols that happen that allow that, from HTTP that serves that data that goes to the server, fetches it, shows it to you, and that's, as a developer right now that you want to create a page, you don't need to know how that protocol works. You just use it in a simple way, and you have tons of libraries that provide that to you.
Yeah.
And that's something that we want to do for Web3.
That's great. So you mentioned that Apillon is creating some types of services for the developers. Can you explain a little bit more about that services? What they are?
Yeah. So we started out with, looking at what developers need when they start. We started with the basics. So first is storage. We allow you to store any kind of data on IPFS, which is a protocol, which is quite different from HTTP, that allows you files to be distributed. And we take care a lot of things around there. We make sure it's as simple as AWS, so you can drag and drop. You can use APIs, SDKs, CLIs for developers that they can just upload their files, and that's it. They need to care about that actually goes to the IPFS, that those files are pinned all over the world, so that they're unstoppable. We take care of that part, so it's simple for developers. That's the first service that we started with. Then the next service that we provide is hosting. This is a bit expand service of the storage. So all this is powered by Crust Network, which is a parachain on Polkadot at the backend. But for a developer, you don't need to care about that. It's drag and drop, it works. So the next part is storage, is hosting. We make sure that we give you a SSL domain. We give you caching in the front, so you can hook up your own custom domain to it, and you can serve your web page through a distributed protocol, as simple as any kind of page. It's a common, let's say, deployment process, like for any kind of page that you're using in Web 2 world right now, but we make sure it's Web 3 and fast. Those are the first two services that we launched with, and then we added a third service that is more blockchain specific, which is powered by Moonbeam and A-Star right now, and that's NFTs. So if you want to create a NFT collection, you can do that very simply with us. Meaning we have a nice UI, a wizard, so you don't need to know all the details about it. You just need to prepare your characters, collection, images, metadata, and we take care of the rest. So we, instead of needing to write your own smart contract, you can you have a wizard and you say, okay, this is a soulbound token, and I'll be minting 100 of them. and I want to mint them to this and this users. You drag in your files. We make sure those files are, again, stored on IPFS in a decentralized way, images, metadata. We generate everything for you, issue the, deploy the smart contract. And also, we go a step further. We even have templates written in JavaScript, in Vue, in React, so that front-end developers can just take that code and start creating the website around that collection and launch it simply.
That's perfect.
Yeah, those are the first three services that are live right now. And we then go into identities. So when you go, you need authentication and identity if you really want to have a full package. This is where we partnered with Kilt, and we're leveraging that parachains so that you can use Kilt identity to log in into our platform, and we'll be providing a login service with that. By the time this podcast will be going live, it will maybe already be available on the platform. You'll have to check that out. And we have a few services still in the pipeline. Not sure what to already tease, but one of them is going to be an expansion on the NFTs, leveraging distributed computing via Fala parachain.
That's amazing. So now you can explain to us about the IPFS, what this means and why this is so important for the blockchain and to APILLON itself.
Yeah, so IPFS is interplanetary file system. I probably didn't. And it's in its core, it's a different way of how you're addressing and retrieving files. So let's say if you're talking about currently, when you load a web page, you have a server. That server has an IP. The domain that you're writing in actually resolves into that IP, pointing at that server, and you say, okay, I want to load this page. A request goes to that server and brings the files needed and shows it to you. This is now how HTTP works, and it's location based. So the files are at this IP at this location, while IPFS itself is content based. So it doesn't matter where it is; it matters what it is. So if you have a file, that file has let's say, unique signature, and anyone in the IPFS network that has that file with that unique signature, you can fetch that file from them. So let's say you have 50 computers around the world that have the same file on their computer. Instead of loading that from one central server, you can load from all 50 of them at the same time, which theoretically makes IPFS more efficient, faster, and distributed. So even if one of those computers falls down, there's still 49 others from which you can pull the data. So IPFS itself is not a blockchain. It's a protocol which allows this distribution of files. Now, in addition to that, you have like cross network, which is a parachain, which is another layer with more of an incentive layer. So let's say you have a file and you want it to be distributed all over the world. What's the economic reason that someone would have that on their computer? There is none. But cross network makes sure that you can pay a bit for other users around on the IPFS network to store that file and make sure that those files are really there, that they're stored for the duration, and that those nodes are fairly paid.
That's amazing. I love how APILLON try to simplify this development process with the Web3. And now let's talk about Crust and APILLON, that amazing integration with the Crust network. Can you explain us a little bit about this collaboration?
Yeah, so like I explained what Crust network is doing here for the IPFS. Now, when a user comes to our APILLON and says, okay, I want this file to be distributed, we are the ones that actually have Crust tokens in the backend. We pay for that transaction, so we pay for that file to be stored all over the world, and we use Crust network. They're the ones, that's the network level that make sure that those files are distributed. But for the end user, there's no payment, no Crust tokens. They don't even need to know what's going on. But the result is a fully distributed file on the IPFS network.
That's perfect. So now let's jump into the NFT section. We have seen really amazing collections and stuff going on the APILLON platform. So you can explain to us in a simple way how this works, and yeah, for example, give us an example of any collection built with APILLON technology.
So we're I have quite a bit of background from NFTs, so I know what users want from their collection, how they want it. So we created a pre-made smart contracts that can be configured via a simple UI, or it can be from an API or CLI. So even if you have no knowledge of blockchain or smart contracts or whatever, or how NFTs really work, you can still come and click together your own collection. And this then allows you to, like I mentioned before, we can do things like a drop, meaning at this specific time frame, you'll be able to buy any kind NFTs from this collection for a specific price. You can time that. You can have things like revoking NFT. This comes especially becomes useful if you're doing soulbound KYC, soulbound KYCs, soulbound NFTs. Soulbound NFT meaning it's not transferable from somebody. For an example, let's say you have an ambassador program, and you want to give your ambassador an NFT which proves that he is the ambassador for your project. He works very well for 2 years, and after 2 years he stops being an ambassador. Then you can now, as the NFT collector creator, you can say, okay, I'm revoking him now and destroying that NFT, proving that he's an ambassador since he stopped being one, for example. And those things can be easily configurable. And then we, in the backend, deploy that. We currently support Moonbeam network and A-Star network. So you can deploy that NFT on both of those networks. And then just, whatever you want to do with your collection, or whatever kind of collection you want to do, you can do it. And I think that there's a few collections that already came out of this that were sold out. The Genesis Mercats was one of the first one on Moonbeam, and a second collection is already in progress. So you can users viewers can go and check it out.
That's great. That's great. So thank you for the answer, Tadej. And now let's talk about the Polkadot ecosystem. Why APILLON focus on the Polkadot technology and knowing, for example, Solidity or Solana chain?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons we, focused on Polkadot. One of them is that Polkadot is, more enterprise orientated and ready. So this kind of appealed to us when we started out, because the first, let's say, our first focus was enterprise customers, even though we are now more focusing on, more regular developers. But again, that's one of the first draws. And the second, the most important one, is how Polkadot itself is made. So Polkadot is, that give it the most power, and all those parachains, so-called, or app chains, are use case specific, and that's really, really important. So each app chain is made for a specific reason and very optimized for that. So you have Kilt that does identities and only identities and everything around identities. So that chain is firstly made for one specific reason and optimized for that use case. And this also, for us at APILLON, this means we can use it and create a service from it specifically for identities. So that one parachain is so app specific that it can gives us a direct service that we can do on top of it. That's if you look at it, Ethereum or Polkadot, those are all general purpose chains, which have their pluses and its minuses. Its minuses is that there's no use case specific chains. Like Crust is doing storage, very specific thing. Kilt is doing very specific thing. A-Star is doing a very specific thing, and that actually enables you to do to build services on top for those specific things. So this actually allows you to do empowers APILLON, a platform like that, which is providing those services. Without those specific app chains, that would not be possible.
That's amazing. Yeah, Polkadot is an amazing chain, and it's great to have APILLON with us in this chain. So now let's go to the last two questions of the interview, of the podcast. One is about the talking about Polkadot. Let's talk about the governance. You have APILLON team launched a proposal that was finally rejected, unfortunately for the team and for the users. So maybe Tadej, you can explain us what are the future plans with this proposal and maybe some reason of this rejection, if you know someone. It's a more salty question, but yeah, I think that the listeners will love to listen to this.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we made quite a big proposal. So in this proposal, we went really the grand vision for what we see APILLON going into next 3 years, which is because of that we went into very specific. We written like a 58-page long proposal going into details like how we will solve things like pricing of the chains, so a token variability, since we're paying for underlying services in their respectful tokens. We went into how we can make sure those are SLA grade services, so that if serious companies start to use this, they need some guarantees. We went into all the different parachains and how we can integrate them, meaning our team and everything and the vision is quite grand, and the ask itself because of that was quite big as well. Now the feedback that we eventually got is that this is too big of an ask at one time. So the main feedback was that instead of going for one big offering, let's go for more lower ones, just so that we can continually show our traction, that we can see, that people can see that we're delivering things that we're promising. So this is now came into a restructuring of the proposal itself, and we'll now be coming out with a new proposal that is much lower, around, I think it's below 20% of the original ask, and moving though into more fixed milestones and what we'll do in those milestones. As for the governance itself, we were one of the first projects. We had the most, let's say, voters around it, everything, and we were like maybe a bit of a guinea pig for how the proposal should be or not be, because it was just the start of this OpenGov. And the thing I believe lacking most from the OpenGov is feedback. So we got the feedback to the proposal eventually, but instead of we opened a discussion and we got very little feedback, we adjusted based on that feedback, and then we went to the actual proposal, and we got extremely little feedback there as well. Okay, we got it eventually to be more concrete, but the biggest let's say nay voters were not really let's say they were not vocal about why the bigger nay came in. But yeah, now we eventually got that information, but we would prefer if that was more transparent early on. So instead of waiting 20 days during the proposal, managing one thing and the other, that feedback early on would be better.
Yeah, thank you, Tadej, for your answer. I'm excited to see the new APILLON proposal, and see if that passes. I think that the team is doing an amazing job, and the Polkadot community is have its plus and minuses, but at the end they are a really good community. So let's jump to the last question. It's a personal question for you, to Tadej. It's about what means for you working in APILLON. If you are happy with your work, what is being part of a new project in Polkadot? It's that type of question.
Okay, so yeah, it's really exciting to work with new technologies, really, let's say, breaking the ice, thinking about new things, thinking about how to bring this power to developers, how to make it simple for them. It's kind of cool from the perspective. I've been a developer from 20 years, and it's really nice to see to create a tool for developers, and then you see someone checking it out and goes, oh, nice, that works. Oh, that was something I needed. That was really easy to transition. It was it's easy to host a web page, and you're like, it's different if it's for end users, but it's if you do that for developers, which you are, like your own audience, it's I believe even that much satisfying. And I love working on those things. I love thinking how to solve problems like this. That's what I really like to do.
That's the best, and I think that APILLON's team is an amazing team. All the team is super kind, and excited. And thanks to the APILLON team to be with us today in TMP podcast. Hope you enjoy it, Tadej. And now to end the podcast, you can say whatever you want. So it's up to you.
I encourage everyone to check our new proposal and to check our platform. And of course, to host your web pages decentrally.
So thank you, Tadej, and to the APILLON team to be with us today. And to our listeners, see you in another TMP podcast. Thank you for listening to us today, and see you really soon. Thank you.
Cheers.